Hey everyone, this is Leo Young here with Impressor Reviews, episode 17, and tonight we'll be going over season 2, episode 4 of Legend of Tomorrow, titled Abominations. So as you can see from the picture, it's going to get really bloody. Like, I was very surprised with how in-depth this episode went with slavery, and not even slavery, just the graphic and brutal reminder. They do slave hymns, the waiting in the water, and all that. It's like, it was not something you expect to see, at least from Legends. You would think you would see something like this from Arrow, and that would have been interesting, a Night of the Living Arrow. But hey, that's what we got. This is what we got, and I'm not going to complain about it. So let's get right into the review. So the show starts off with showing us a time thief or a time pirate, depends on what you want, that lands in Mississippi in 1863 during the Civil War, and he's infected with whatever this virus is. So he's basically the reason this all spread it out. Now on the Wave Rider, Jax and Martin are listening to the recording that Barry says, and they show a little bit farther in what the recording says, and Barry says that there's going to be a war. And they're still like wondering if they should tell the others, but they don't because they're called into the library to answer the distress call from the time thief. So they pretty much know where they're going and all that. And Stein doesn't want Jax to go on the mission due to Jax being a young African American male, a black guy. So Jax finally gets him to go like, listen, we're all going. I'm fine. Get over it. So on the field, when they get out there, Vixen intervenes, racing to the aid of a courier ex-slave who you might know as Henry Scott. And that's when they see the zombie Confederate soldiers, and oh my goodness, HBO blood and gore level fest. Like, Mick Rory slammed a rock on a man's head, Daredevil style. It was amazing. Something I probably have to rewatch this episode just to watch again. Now, what we learn is Stein is afraid. When they get back to the Wave Rider, they learn Stein is afraid of zombies. He has an irrational fear, even though they don't exist. And during the fight with the courier, he was wounded and left dying. So he hands his mission over to Jax. And when they get again, they find out later that Mick was actually bitten by a zombie. So he's the only member who's actually infected. Also, they learned one of the time quakes, I believe, is that the South lost the Civil War. Oh, no, the South won the Civil War. I'm sorry. So Jax decides that this is a personal mission, and he wants to go fix it on his own. And Sarah's like, no, you don't. Bring Vixen with you, because this ain't going to happen, you little 22-year-old kid. So that's what they do. Jax and Vixen go on a little research and recovery mission, while Sarah and Nate go to warn General Grant about you know, the zombie apocalypse. It's kind of funny, like, the slavery, I feel like, steps the zombies. Like, they beat the zombies, and, like, let me tell you, the reason I say that is because once they get to once Jax and Vixen get to, like, the slave plantation, first thing you see is a female slave being wet. Like, yeah! Yeah! And I was like, oh my god! Like, the entire, like, episode is just, they don't hold back. They don't say the N-word, but they just go, you dirty, bam. It's really amazing. Not slavery was amazing, but like how much CW really went into this. So back on the Wave Rider, Ray and Stein continue to try and save Mick, but that fails and actually activates Mick's infection, and they have to lock him in the med bay. So Stein and Ray argue a bit, and they plan to go in and inject him with another vaccine, but they find that he's actually escaped, and it pretty much turned into a Night of the Living Dead horror fest on the Wave Rider, with the nerd, the old man, and the giant brute zombie. So back outside, Sarah and Nate are taken to Lee's camp to warn him, and seeing as he doesn't believe them, Sarah goes out and she brings back the head of a zombie. Now later that night, Amaya, aka Vixen, and Jax are infiltrating a plantation, and Amaya's having trouble with how the legends do things. They're not allowed to go and help every person they see that's in distress, and Jax is like, yeah, you can't do that. And what we see later is even though Jax is black, he has no clue what it's like to be a real slave. Like, he tries to walk away from a slave master, and that guy's like, yeah, that ain't happening with my fried chicken. Personally, I think the Colonel from K. You know what? No, I'm not even gonna say that. Um, So he's taken to the barn, chained up with the other slaves. He's kind of beaten a bit, and Sarah pretty much calls out, and we learn that the entire team is spread out thin. Sarah and Nate are about to get overrun with Lee's camp by zombies. Stein and Ray are stuck on the ship with zombie Mick. Not Nate. Jax is in chains, and the only one out free is Amaya. So Vixen moves in after losing Jax, which is probably, well, not probably, but what we figured she would do, seeing that she's the only one who's free. And they free the other slaves. And one of the slaves trusts Vixen because the amulet she wears comes from the same tribe that her mother came from. So as they're about to leave, zombies basically attack the plantation and the party that's going on inside. Jack manages to find the plans alongside a slave, and on the other side, where Sarah and Nate are, Sarah sets a plan into motion, which involves Nate leading the zombies away with a flare, because his skin is made of steel and all that, and they'd be unable to bite through. And he takes them to a box of dynamite and blows them to Kingdom Come. And on the Raid Rider, Stein is the one who manages to cure Mick. They use an not toxin, an airborne version instead of a physical, an injection. So all three stories wrap up, and the legends come out on top. And Jax turns the plans into Grant and gives the credit to Henry Scott. And if you actually look him up, he's a real person. So finishing the story, Mick and Ray have a talk about, not. It's pretty much a thing about they don't have the abilities everyone else has. They don't have like the skills. Ray doesn't have anything else besides his suit. So seeing as he's having a hard time coming to terms with it, out of respect, Mick gives him Snart's cold gun and says he needs a new partner. And that, my friends, is the end of Legends of Tomorrow, Episode 4, Abominations. And wow, I have a few personal thoughts I definitely am going to add, but other than that, I hope you enjoyed, and well, let's get right into the thoughts.